Hi there, this is Teacher Shirley with yet another econ lesson for you. We have begun with the topic supply. In it we learned about quantity supplied and supply, individual supply schedule and curve, market supply schedule and curve. In the previous lesson we learned about the factors affecting supply and the law of supply. I will now take you on to learn about more aspects of the topic of supply. We will be learning about the changes in supply. Are you ready? Then let's move on. In this lesson in economics, we will learn about the variations in supply, that is the extension in supply and contraction in supply. We will also learn about the shifts in supply, that is increase in supply and decrease in supply. We have learned very clearly the difference between quantity supplied and supply. We know that quantity supplied is a specific amount that is supplied at a specific price. Well, when the quantity supplied changes, we have the variations in supply taking place. So what are variations in supply? Variations in supply refers to change in quantity supplied of a commodity due to change in own price of the commodity, other things remaining the same. Moving from one point to another along the same supply curve is called variation in supply. I've put up the same slide which we have taken in the topic while we were studying variations in demand, because I want you to understand that in variations we are moving along the same curve. It may be the demand curve or in this case the supply curve. As you can see, I've shown you the direction. It is upward moving from left to right. So in variations we will be moving along the supply curve. Remember that variations takes place only due to change in quantity supplied, and that comes about due to change in own price of the commodity. What do we mean by other things remaining the same? Other things remaining the same means the other factors other than price do not change. They remain the same. Let us study the first case of variation in supply, and that is extension in supply. In the diagram, extension is shown by movement upwards along the same curve from point A to B on the supply curve SS. When the price is OP, quantity supplied is OQ, and when price rises to OP1, quantity supplied rises to OQ1. So we see here, price is plotted on the y-axis and quantity supplied on the x-axis. Let's just consider that we're talking here about the quantity supplied of ice creams. Say initially the price of ice creams is OP or 20 rupees. And the quantity supplied at that price is 20 units. Consider that the price rises from OP to OP1 and the price at OP1 is 40 rupees. At this new price, the quantity supplied is 40 units. So we see we have moved from point A to point B upwards from left to right along the supply curve SS. This rise in quantity supplied due to a rise in price only, other factors remaining the same, is called as extension in supply. So what is extension in supply? Let us define it. Other things being equal, when with the rise in price, quantity supplied of a commodity rises, it is called extension of supply. In this case, there is a movement from left to right upwards along the same supply curve. The second case of variation in supply is contraction in supply. In the diagram, contraction is shown by a movement downwards along the same supply curve from point A to B along the supply curve SS. When price is OP, quantity supplied is OQ, and when price falls, to OP2, quantity supplied falls to OQ2. Let us consider now that the original price is OP, that is rupees 40, and we are talking about the supply curve of ice creams. At this price OP, the quantity supplied is 40 units, that is OQ. Consider now that the price falls from OP to OP2 to rupees 20. At this new price, there is a new quantity supplied, that is 20 units. We denote it by Q2. So we see there is a movement downwards from right to left along the same supply curve SS from a point A to a point B. This fall in quantity supplied due to a fall in price only, other factors remaining constant, is called as contraction in supply. So you see in this case, in the example we're talking about, due to a fall in the price of ice creams, the quantity supplied of ice creams has fallen. What is contraction in supply? Other things being equal, when with the fall in price, quantity supplied of a commodity falls, it is called contraction of supply. In this case, there is a movement downwards from right to left along the same supply curve. Now let's move on to study about another kind of change in supply, and that is shifts in supply. What are shifts in supply? Shifts in supply refer to all such situations when supply for a commodity increases or decreases due to a change in other factors other than own price of the commodity, moving from one point on one curve to another point on another curve is a shift in supply. So I've taken the same slide of two escalators, and as you can see, they're both moving upwards. So if we can move from one escalator to another, similarly we can move from one supply curve to another. Price remaining the same, but other factors changing. Let me tell you here that shifts in supply are due to changes in supply. We are not talking about changes in quantity supplied due to change in price. We're talking about change in the entire supply schedule due to changes in other factors other than own price of the commodity. So here we are referring to changes in supply. Let us take the first case of shifts in supply, and that is increase in supply. So you can see here there is a supply schedule. In this schedule we are showing the various prices and quantity supplied initially of a particular commodity or good, and then in the third column we are showing the new quantity supplied, which happens due to change in other factors other than price. But what kind of changes? We're talking about changes that are favorable to the supplier, producer or firm. We learned about the factors affecting supply. We learned about change in technology. So if technology changes favorably, for instance, there will be an increase in supply. If government policy changes in favor of the supplier or firm by way of increasing subsidies, there could be an increase in supply. Say the number of firms in the industry rises, so the supply will increase. Consider that price of related goods might have changed favorably for this good, then the supply will change of this particular good that we're talking about. So let's examine now the diagram. In the diagram we see the original supply curve SS, which is plotted with the help of the first two columns, that is price and original quantity supplied. Now consider that due to change in other factors other than price, favorable changes in favor of the supplier, there is a shift in the entire supply. So you can see there's a new supply created, new quantity supplied at various respective prices. And when we plot this new supply onto the same diagram, we see that the supply curve has shifted to the right. So we call it the forward shift in supply. The supply moves to a new supply curve, that is S1, S1. So basically we're looking at the same price. For example, price rupees 30. At the same price rupees 30, the original quantity supplied is OQ. So we are at point A. Now consider that at the same price, a higher quantity is supplied, and that is 40 units. So we plotted it here on point B. So you show here that the quantity supplied has increased at the same price. So we are moving from point A on the original supply curve SS to a point B on the new supply curve S1, S1. You can see the supply curves are both sloping upwards from left to right, but there is a shift in the supply curve. And that has come about due to favorable changes in factors other than price. We have to now explain the diagram of increase in supply. In the diagram, an increase in quantity supplied of a commodity at its existing price is seen. When the price is OP, quantity supplied is OQ. Even when the price remains constant, the firm supplies OQ1 units. This may be due to changes in other factors other than price, like increase in subsidies, favorable changes in technology, change in the goal of the producer, rise in the price of substitutes, and so on. Let us now move on to defining what is increase in supply, having studied the increase in supply with the help of a schedule and diagram. So what is increase in supply? It is a situation when quantity supplied of a commodity increases even when own price of the commodity is constant, or it is a rise in supply caused by a favorable rise in factors other than price. For example, the supply of gold may increase even if the price of gold is constant, perhaps due to a future expectation of a fall in the price of gold. So the suppliers of gold will be very eager to sell now in the present when the price of gold is pretty high, because they expect that in the future there may be a fall in the price of gold, and that time in the future they will be less willing to supply more. So now itself they are ready to supply more gold at the existing price. Let us now study some more examples of increase in supply. The supply of sanitizers and masks increases with an increase in the number of firms producing them. We saw in the initial stages of the lockdown, the supply of sanitizers and masks was falling short. But the moment the suppliers realized that there is a demand created on account of the pandemic, many new firms entered the market and started stepping up production, and due to the increase in the number of firms, the supply of sanitizers and masks in the market increased. Let's move on to the second example. The supply of mobile phones, tablets, laptops increases, perhaps due to technological advancements, or if you look at the current scenario, even due to business confidence. Well, we know that the entire student and teaching community is depending on the use of these devices. Not only us, but it is also the people who are working from home with the help of these devices. So suppliers, producers, and firms that dealt or deal with all these electronic devices built up their business confidence because they knew that there is an increasing demand for these products. So the supply of these devices increased due to this business confidence, and also due to the present scenario, the demand that is created. The third example, the supply of milk rises as milk producers are given subsidies from the government or even introduction of new technology, thus increasing the prospects of making a profit. Let us now move on to studying the second case of shifts in supply, and that is decrease in supply. So we see here a schedule where various prices are given. The respective quantities supplied at these prices originally or in the initial stage is given, and then due to changes in other factors other than price, unfavorable changes of factors other than price change, and so the quantity supplied is seen to fall. So at the same price, a lesser quantity is supplied. So we see here at price rupees 30, initially 40 units of the commodity was supplied, and now the quantity supplied is less. So in totality, supply has changed due to unfavorable changes in factors other than price. So here we have SS, which is the original supply curve, and that is drawn in keeping with the first two columns, that is the price and the original quantity supplied. The second curve that you see, which has shifted backwards, is S2, S2. And that curve is drawn on the basis of the price and new quantity supplied. Consider maybe that government has increased taxes. So if the government increases taxes, the cost of production rises. The producer sees less possibility of making profits, and so decreases the supply at various possible prices. So we see there is a shift of the supply curve from SS to S2, S2. And this shift is backwards. So this decrease in supply is also known as backward shift in supply. We are moving from point A on the original curve SS to a point B backwards on a new supply curve S2, S2. We see at the same price OP on the original supply curve, the quantity supplied is OQ. And on the new supply curve, the quantity supplied is OQ2. So we are moving from 40 units to 30 units at the price OP. The price remains constant. Having studied backward shift or decrease in supply with the help of a schedule and diagram, let us now go on to explain the diagram. In the diagram, a decrease in the quantity supplied of a commodity at its existing price is seen. When the price is OP, the quantity supplied is OQ. Even when the price remains constant, the producer supplies OQ2 units. This may be due to change in other factors other than price, like change in the goal of the producer. Maybe the goal of the producer has changed from making profits to increasing sales. Maybe the supply might have decreased due to unfavorable changes in government policies like taxation. Maybe there is a fall in the number of firms and fall in the price of substitute goods. Diagrammatically, it means a backward shift in supply curve from SS to S2, S2. The consumer shifts from point A on SS to point B on S2, S2. What is decrease in supply? It is a situation when quantity supplied of a commodity decreases even when own price of the commodity is constant, or it is a fall in supply caused by an unfavorable change in factors other than price. For example, the supply of petrol may decrease even if the price of petrol is constant, perhaps due to rise in the tax on petrol, tax being a factor other than price. Here are some more examples of decrease in supply for you. Supply of wheat will decrease if government reduces subsidies, subsidies being a factor other than price. Supply of cars may decrease if government raises taxes on per unit production of cars. That means that the cost of production will rise, and so the profit margin will also fall, and so the suppliers are willing to supply less at the existing price. Third, the supply of luxuries may decrease during the pandemic, which is another factor other than price. Of course, we have not put it as one of the factors affecting supply, but other changes, there are many more factors affecting supply. We have taken just 8 of them when we were learning about factors affecting supply. But here you can see that there are many other factors other than price which could also affect supply. The supply of gold may decrease in the present if there is an expectation that price will rise in the future. So suppliers are less willing to supply more now because they know that the price of gold is expected to rise in the future. So they will supply more when the price rises in the future. But now at the existing price, they are less willing to supply more. In fact, they will supply less at the existing price. The next example, supply of tomatoes will decrease if the crop is destroyed on account of rains. So you see, weather also becomes a change in other factors other than price. And when other factors other than price come about, then we have the shifts in supply. So children, today we have studied about the variations in supply and shifts in supply. There are so many more examples that we can apply to each of the 4 cases that we learned today. In the case of variations, that is extension and contraction in supply, we can put in the examples of the supply of various types of goods and examine and study how quantity supplied reacts to the change in price only, other factors remaining the same. So also with the case of shifts in supply, we can take so many more examples than what I have given you today. And I'd like you to think on that, because the more we apply to our real life situation, the better we understand the concepts in microeconomic theory. So students, I'd like you, as usual, for you later to view the video again so that you better understand the concepts in a more clear way. Okay? So thank you all for listening to me, and God bless you all. Stay safe.